There is a growing trend in film today,
Come on, Loosechester. See what you got.
a type of scene that, I'll admit, I used to enjoy.
And you must be the bully of detention. How dumb can you be?
But as I have grown older, I have started to recognize a pattern.
Keep the bitch, cause I'm done with it.
One that no longer invoked positive feelings, but more boredom. These are moments where the protagonist, a favored character in a film, or someone they are protecting are verbally threatened, insulted, or intimidated. They then respond with violence, or at very least the threat of violence, and this action is framed as righteous, justified, or morally correct to give the audience the emotional satisfaction of seeing a disliked character on the receiving end of violence, whether truly justified or not. As far as I am aware, there is no name for this trope, although if someone is aware of one describing this phenomenon, please make us aware in the comments. But for the sake of this video, we will call this particular kind of scene cathartic validation through violence. My issue with the trope isn't so much in the single act itself. I don't mind a film in isolation that involves the lead using violence to get out of a situation per se. But when it is so overused in modern-day filmmaking, it becomes almost a hack.
Adam, I said let's go. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it? What's that supposed to mean?
It means he can kick your ass.
You can kick my ass.
1 foot.
1 foot, Erickson.
Let's go.
Oh, we're not done.
I think we are.
Whoa. Well, I guess you'd just rather play with this pole then. You little shit.
The times it feels particularly shocking are when the scene does little to progress the narrative or inform the viewer of something important. It's just crammed in to satisfy the audience's desire for moral justice through violence. I wish more films were written where the protagonist was shown to be above simply hitting people to resolve an issue.
Do you know who you're talking to?
1, 2.
In some instances, people might say, but how could they have possibly gotten out of that situation without fighting? But these are not historical accounts of actual events. They are stories, and writers, in my opinion, should put in more effort when it comes to the resolution of these scenarios, rather than rely on this trope. You can say a non-violent resolution isn't always realistic, but so often the scenarios where this protagonist overcomes the odds through force are more unrealistic than if they had somehow persuaded their attacker to change their mind. But annoyingly, that doesn't make the trope any less predictable. If I see a scrawny person mistreated in a film, I already know an unrealistic scene is coming where this person will physically dominate someone of much larger stature than them. 9 films out of 10. Because of its overuse, it just begins to feel like writers increasingly rely on violence to signal righteousness instantly, avoid ambiguity, or deliver emotional payoff without narrative risk. It's efficient, but it's also become cheap.
What else you got for me? Huh?
So rarely do these scenes tell the audience anything they either didn't already know or something required to progress the story. These scenes feel like they exist because viewers expect the bad guy to get hit, and studios fear quieter resolutions won't feel satisfying. These scenes of cathartic validation through violence now function more like formulaic obligation, a tick box, if you will. Does my film have a funny side character? Tick. Does it have a love interest? Tick. Does it have a scene with a protagonist giving a smug speech before they start beating up a bully that will be clipped up later on YouTube Shorts to epic hype music? Tick. We've got our film, baby. So, let's look at some scenes that play into this trope. Remember, the claim is not that all of these scenes are equally bad in their indulgence of cathartic validation through violence, or even necessarily bad for doing so. In The Gentleman, 2 scenes in particular stand out as classic examples of the trope. The first is when Ray needs to retrieve a phone from some rowdy youths.
Bruv, this guy's trying to take my phone. What fucking dude? Fuck up, you little pussy. How are you gonna tweet your one out of this one, mate?
Exactly why he needs the phone and how much it means to him is unimportant. Just know he really needs this phone. The trope begins, however, when one of the young lads threatens Ray.
Drop fucking money and run, boy.
So Ray pulls out a gun and scares them away.
Right!
Music plays to let you know that it was very clever and cool.
Right.
And the scene ends. In fairness, we must mention that violence isn't Ray's first port of call.
I'm trying to buy it. For good money. Honest money.
But that leads to another problem with this type of scene. Because, you know, the cathartic release of violence is coming. You know the lad with the machete isn't going to accept the money. You know it will escalate because this type of resolution is what writers think you will find the most satisfying. The second scene from the same film is slightly less defensible in its indulgence, however. Colin Farrell goes out of his way to tell a loud group of young boys that they are being rude. But does it in a fairly rude way himself, instigating a confrontation?
2 burgers on the stove. Get that quick. Understand? 2 chips as well.
What's the smell of wee in here?
The boys, of course, find this insulting and emasculating, and so they attack Colin with a knife, and of course, he beats them up.
Yeah.
Oh, shit! Come on, nigga, dickhead. Back to where?
You can, of course, argue that Colin had to defend himself, but he also didn't have to get involved in the first place. And besides, as I said in the intro, he only had to beat them up because the writers made a scene that demanded it from him. It would have been more difficult to write a scene that is just as entertaining, that doesn't involve teens being battered in a chippy, but at least I wouldn't have seen it coming the very second those loud kids walked in. And of course, you know Colin Farrell is cool because even the kids he has just concussed speak of him with reference once they realize who he is.
Hang on. Are you the coach?
Coach, it's Ernie.
Another film that backs the main character into a corner where they have to choose violence is of course Roadhouse. And I'm sure at this point, you are screaming at the screen. But the whole point of Roadhouse is the fight scenes. But my problem isn't that I went to see an action film and someone got beaten up. It's the horribly predictive way in which the scene unfolds that bothers me. It's a step-by-step walkthrough of cathartic validation through violence. Dalton confronts a group of thugs.
I just wanted to get you outside so I could ask you and your friends respectfully to leave the premises.
They threaten him.
Oh, we'll leave. After I kill you.
He says something cool.
Sure. Hey, Frankie,
Yeah.
is there a hospital nearby?
Literally, who gives a
Shut the up and fight, asshole.
Is there a hospital nearby? Is it like too far? Is it close?
He beats them all up.
Life's not fair.
Oh, I just slapped you. Are you all right?
What?
And then looks awesome at the end for doing so. Another film this felt incredibly predictable in was Kingsman, which introduces a variant into the trope, but makes it no less predictable in modern filmmaking. And that is the idea that the protagonist is unsuspecting badass. In The Gentleman and Roadhouse, the characters we mentioned quite clearly knew how to handle themselves from the jump. But films like Kingsman have more of a David and Goliath dynamic to them. The only snag is that this has become almost as overused as the trope itself. And this type of scene almost becomes more likely to be a part of a piece of filmmaking if the protagonist happens to have a non-threatening appearance. But the moment those men walked into the bar looking for trouble,
you should get out of the way, Granddaddy. You'll get hurt and all. He ain't joking. You should go.
You just knew Mr. Darcy was going to say something cool.
Manners maketh man.
And then shock horror, beat them all up.
And let me teach you a lesson.
Looks epic at the end for doing so. A show that felt promising at first was Breaking Bad. Often it seemed Walter was placed in a threatening situation in the early season and managed to talk his way out of it. But as the show went on, more and more of the tropes we have been discussing started popping up. I feel this is slightly more forgivable, however, because while these moments are still framed in a slightly cool manner, it is clear that the show is trying to demonstrate Walt resorts to this more, because he is becoming a worse and worse person. However, this doesn't mean the early seasons of Breaking Bad could resist rolling out the cathartic, violent response to bullying, at least one time. Walt and his family are shopping, and a small group of young men are mocking his disabled son, and Walt appears to leave.
God,
Walt.
Then, only to return through the shop door and dish out some violence to these assholes. Very cool. But within this scene also holds a new element to what we are discussing today. See, Walt didn't need to go back into that shop and beat those guys up. He and his family were not in danger. And I know, for this series, it makes sense to show Walt doing increasingly reckless things to show his mental descent. But the fact I knew it was coming ruined it for me. If you have ever seen the series Jack Reacher starring Alan Ritchson, you have basically seen an entire show built around this cathartic violence trope. It's so common and obvious in the show that I won't dwell on it for too long. But here we have a kid getting bullied. Jack intervenes and says something cool.
So you're stupid and ugly.
Jack beats them up. The audience revels in the satisfaction.
Oh, next time you see Richard, walk the other way.
In another scene, a man is harassing a woman.
You like cream? I know where you can get some more.
Jack says something to put him in his place.
She said the cream came from your mother. Probably because she's a big fat cow.
Jack beats the man up, and the audience yet again is satisfied.
You have any thoughts on dessert?
But it is adding a slight variation on the concept similar to Breaking Bad, in that the protagonist is defending others, not themselves, which of course adds to the audience's vindication that the violence was righteous and justified, and therefore they don't need to feel any shame about enjoying it. Let's look at some more variations of this scene. In Hell or High Water, a man pulls up and is threatening one of the Howard brothers.
What? You looking for trouble, mother?
The protagonist says something cool.
Boy, you'd think there were 10 of me.
But this time, the writers mix it up a bit, as it is someone else who in fact comes in from off-screen to hand out the justice. But this doesn't actually make things less predictable. Once you saw this confrontation begin, you knew what was happening next. You just might not have guessed which brother would be dishing out the damage.
Yeah, so could have killed you. Not the way it would have gone, little brother.
I know by this point you probably already get the gist, but just to further drive the point home, Twin Peaks. Woman gets threatened by nasty men. Our hero sticks up for the woman.
Leave her alone.
Enacts violence on her abusers. And even they can't believe how cool he is.
What the f just happened?
In the film Harley-Davidson and the Marlboro Man, man walks into a gas station where the woman is being threatened. He says something cool.
Clean, filtered fresh air, and just takes a couple of scumbags to stink it up.
He beats them up. The audience enjoys the apparent justice.
Pump all the gas you can hold.
Sometimes a film will tease us, like in War Dogs when Jonah Hill approaches a group of men asking for weed, only to have his money taken off him and threatened with a gun if he doesn't leave. The film makes it look like maybe he is going to walk away from the situation. But you know that is actually too bold of a move for a modern film to do these days. So he comes back with an Uzi and shoots up the block. He doesn't get his money back or an apology, but he does get to say something cool.
Come on, where's everybody going? Thought we're gonna hang out.
Another film that nearly had the balls not to indulge in such a trope, surprisingly, was the early Harry Potter films. Regularly, Harry and his amigos would be harassed and bullied by Draco Malfoy and his goons, but rarely did Harry ever violently attack his bully. Him and his friends just kind of took it, and the payoff of Draco getting his comeuppance would usually come later. However, it's just too easy of a trope to indulge in. The audience's call for cathartic validation through violence is simply too strong for most writers and filmmakers to resist. In a scene where Draco is enjoying witnessing the death of an innocent creature called Buckbeak, Miss Granger storms up to him, of course, saying something the audience wishes they could say to Malfoy.
You foul, loathsome, evil little cockroach!
But just when it looks like Hermione is going to take the high ground and walk away, she turns and punches Draco in the face. Now I will give the scene some credit here. It was not set up or executed nearly as ham-handedly as the others we have seen, and it is certainly a shock when you first see the punch because it is so out of character for her. But still, there is too many elements of the trope to simply let it pretend like it's not having Draco punched in the face for any other reason than the audience wants to see him get punched in the face. And look, I don't want to call it writer's cowardice, but it does feel like sometimes like they almost write a scene where our hero comes so close to walking away or talking their way out of it, but then get cold feet and let the violence happen anyway. There are a lot of problems I have with the Netflix series Afterlife, but aside from its constant and cheap emotional manipulation, there was one scene which had a hint of promise. In the scene, two teens attempt to mug Ricky.
Yes, I've got money.
Give it to me then.
Ricky then goes on a tirade about how he has nothing to live for and isn't interested in handing over his cash.
So I'm not gonna go into it, but I don't care about anything anymore. I'm not giving you any money.
Now, watching this for the first time, I was suspicious of this scene, yet hopeful. Ricky had been threatened. He had said something cool, but maybe, just maybe, he was going to talk his way out of this.
No, I'm just tired of doing things I don't want to do, and we always have a choice.
But no, Sign Ricky just hits him. They simply don't trust the audience. They believe you will find a non-violent scene unrewarding, and so they take the quick, violent payoff option. But I disagree. In Mr. In-Between, we do get to see what a non-violent response to a threat or challenge looks like. Ray's daughter is bumped into by a stranger, and she drops her ice cream. He calls them out on it, and they ask what he's going to do about it, and insult him.
You want to start some shit?
And what's your language too, eh?
Oh, piss off, fuckwit.
And honestly, I loved when he just walked away. It said so much more about the character, his values, what he's willing to do in front of his daughter, and the lessons he wants her to learn. How he is willing to swallow pride and be the bigger person. I didn't watch this scene and think less of Ray for not hitting the two kids. I thought more of him. I was so much more informative to his character and the story. Oh wait, nah, he does just go back and hit them. In the next scene, Ray is in some sort of AA or therapy meeting, and he explains why he needs to beat people up.
The world is full of assholes, Ray. You do realize that?
Yeah, and you know why?
Why?
Because people let them get away with it.
And this is another part of why certain audiences crave these scenes. They love the power fantasy of beating up someone who they feel deserves it, and they want to feel righteous about it. This is in many ways relatable. Many men have been intimidated or emasculated in their life at some point and done nothing about it. That is why they love to see a scene where someone does something about it, and they can imagine what it would have been like if they had put their own bully in their place.
Seeing people in pain. If you ever bully or hurt anybody again, I'll come back and butt father with your mom's headless corpse on this goddamn lawn.
Of course, this doesn't only appeal to men. Plenty of women have had their own Hermione Granger moment, when they wished they could have punched that obnoxious man in the face, but instead chose not to. What I'm saying is, it's okay that we enjoy these scenes, but are you not bored of them yet? In Running Scared, two muggers try to rob a pair of police officers without realizing they are cops.
All right, you can take the cash, but we need the wallets.
We want it all. Hurry.
Oh, come on, let us keep the driver's licenses and the snapshots.
And our badges.
They also play into the trope a bit. You could certainly perceive the witty exchange that follows as the humorous version of saying something cool.
Attorney,
Give me your guns, man.
No, you can have the cash, but we gotta keep the guns.
Shit!
No, I don't want to be
You have the right to a
responsible for guns
continental
falling
breakfast.
into the hands of
You have
riffraff
the
such
right
as
to the
yourself.
beverage of
They
your
already
choice in the
got guns.
precinct.
And yes, the scene is resolved with a violent threat.
But I would rather get shot with one of those pissant 22s than with my 38.
Ooh.
But it at least does something with it.
Can we waste them for that?
I think so.
Yeah.
You know, this kind of thing starts in a home.
It's the educational system.
No, the new math drives them nuts.
Right to the streets.
You ready?
This truly makes a big difference. Not only do you never get the impression the officers actually want to shoot the muggers, but they humanize them afterwards in a way very few of the other films mentioned have done. It calls into question, albeit in a humorous way, whether these guys really are bad people or just victims of circumstance. In most films, you know the bad guy deserves to get punched because, well, he's the bad guy. But I like how Running Scared takes a moment to ask, are they actually bad though? Or are they inevitable symptoms of a failing system? The Boys falls into many tropes, some deliberately as satire, and others because it's actually surprisingly hard to write a story without a couple common tropes in it. One I find happens very often in The Boys is that just as someone is about to die, another character will just show up and prevent it from happening. But overall, I think The Boys has some very solid elements of storytelling. A good example of how it avoids the cathartic validation through violence trope, at least in one scene, is when Homelander is threatening Starlight and her boyfriend's life if she doesn't agree to his terms.
I remember what I told you would happen to Huey. You walk. That's next.
And does she give a long preamble before simply beating him up? No.
Good luck with that. Now that you've told my 190 million followers, I'm still pretty famous.
Hey, everybody!
That's me.
Now, of course, Starlight never really had an option to beat up Homelander, but I still like how she uses his insecurities about being loved and famous to resolve the situation. I'm not saying it's better to blackmail someone than to physically assault them, but at least it's different and more interesting and actually tells me something about the characters on screen. Would it be even more interesting if Starlight also had an option of violence, but chose against it? Yes, but it's better than many others. Game of Thrones, particularly in the early seasons, was incredibly well written, and one of its best characters was of course Tyrion Lannister. As a dwarf, Tyrion was unable to simply brawl his way out of tough situations, but he was clever and quick-witted. When he and Bronn are captured by Shagga, things are looking rather bleak for the pair.
Take the half man. He can dance for the children. Kill the other one.
Bronn whips out his sword to fight off Shagga's gang, but Tyrion stops him and offers their attackers money and land instead.
That trinket is worth more than everything your tribe earns.
But this isn't as simple as Tyrion begging for his life. Shagga even refuses him at first. No, rather than beg, he insults Shagga. Just enough to establish confidence without provoking violence.
Those the best weapons you could steal? Good enough for killing sheep? If the sheep don't fight back, Lannister Smith's shit better steal.
And suddenly, Tyrion has turned a non-negotiable situation into a negotiable one. He's not just appealing to Shagga's desire for wealth, but better weapons to equip his people, and a chance to elevate their tribe to one of higher status and security.
The Lords of the Vale have always spat upon the hill tribes. The Lords of the Vale want me dead. I believe it is time for new Lords of the Vale.
In Bridge of Spies, an East German gang threatens Tom Hanks and demand he give them his jacket.
Guten Tag. Ob du dich verlaufen hast.
And so he does. I believe this scene is deliberately staged, just like scenes which do use cathartic violence, in order to make a broader point about its protagonist, James B. Donovan, while another film might have had James miraculously fend off the gang to show he is cool. Bridge of Spies lets James Donovan walk away from this situation, because it's going to show you he is cool in much more meaningful ways.
Don't go Boy Scout on me. We don't have a rule book here.
I'm Irish, you're German, but what makes us both Americans? Just one thing. One. The rule book. We call it the Constitution, and we agree to the rules, and that's what makes us Americans. It's all that makes us Americans, so don't tell me there's no rule book, and don't nod at me like that, you son of a bitch.
In To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus Finch is a lawyer defending Tom Robinson, a black man falsely accused of assaulting a white woman. Whilst Tom is awaiting in trial, Atticus finds out that a lynch mob is likely to come for Tom, so he waits outside the jailhouse for them that night. Atticus doesn't threaten the men. He simply tries to dissuade them by reminding them the sheriff might be nearby.
I think you ought to turn right around and go back home. Heck, Tate's around here somewhere.
No, he ain't.
But what really de-escalates the scene is when Atticus's daughter shows up and recognizes one of the men in the crowd.
Hey, Mr. Cunningham.
What makes the lynch mob leave isn't a threat of violence. It isn't sharpshooting Atticus blasting the mob away. It's his daughter, reminding Mr. Cunningham of who he is when he isn't in a lynch mob.
You brought us some hickory nuts one early morning. Remember? We had a talk. I went and got my daddy to come out and thank you. I go to school with your boy. I go to school with Walter. He's a nice boy. Tell him hey for me, won't you?
I love this scene. In so many films today, you could imagine a similar scene playing out where Atticus says something cool, whips out a gun, and threatens the gang leader Tombstone style. But To Kill a Mockingbird doesn't do that. In so many films, you can predict what is going to happen when conflict arises. But how many people watching this scene for the first time thought, oh, I know how Atticus will get out of this. His daughter will come out of nowhere and innocently bring them great shame for what they are about to do. Nobody, because it's bloody good storytelling. That's not to say films like Tombstone that indulge in cathartically violent scenes are always bad. I love Tombstone. It's a great film. But it is made all the more enjoyable because it has these more predictable scenes, yes.
I said throw down, boy.
But it also has brilliant scenes, like when Curly Bill, Johnny Ringo, and their gang walk into Wyatt Earp's establishment to intimidate the rumored lawman, rather than resolve the scene through yet another gunfight or threat. Val Kilmer's character, Doc Holliday, diffuses the situation by mocking Ringo's gun twiddling with a cup. Having scenes mixed in does wonders for a film. Not only does it demonstrate a degree of creativity from the writers and directors, but it also makes the violent scenes later in the film feel less predictable and more deserved. As stated numerous times, I don't think individual examples of scenes that involve righteous violence from our main characters are always bad. But the sheer amount of these scenes can't be a coincidence, right? And they must have some sort of impact on us or hold some kind of mirror up to what we find entertaining. So, what is it? Does our culture reflect or direct filmmaking? I don't think there is some kind of Hollywood conspiracy to make us all more violent through film, but neither do I believe that we have this abundance of cathartic validation through violence in our media simply because we have demanded that from filmmakers, and they are simply giving us what we want. George Gerbner was a Hungarian-American communication scholar, best known for developing cultivation theory. Gerbner didn't believe that someone simply watches violent film or television and immediately goes out and replicate the horrors they just saw. Instead, he suggests long-term exposure to violent media shapes beliefs about how the world works.
Cultivation theory says that over time, watching television alters a viewer's perception of reality, that their view of the real world starts to march in step with that of the televised one. And the more frequently an image or event is depicted on screen, the greater significance the cultivated viewer attaches to it in the real world.
Of course, these types of scenes have existed in cinema for a very long time, but the sheer number of them in modern filmmaking has certainly increased and continues to grow. Filmmakers realized that these scenes did extremely well. They saw all of the YouTube shorts and TikTok edits of them going viral, and they followed suit. But that doesn't mean the overwhelming amount of these scenes has no impact on us. There is definitely a message hidden within them, and over time, we are subconsciously learning that message. In Susan Sontag's essay, Fascinating Fascism, she responds to a resurgence of interest in Leni Riefenstahl, Nazi Germany's most famous filmmaker. Sontag felt that fascism is not just a political system, but an aesthetic, one that resonates through art, fashion, film, photography, and popular culture. She argues that fascist art and imagery, exemplified by Leni Riefenstahl's work, are dangerous precisely because their beauty and formal elegance mask their ideological content, making domination, obedience, and dehumanization seem admirable or even erotic. By separating aesthetics from politics, modern culture risks becoming complicit in fascism's return, since it fails to confront how deeply its values can be embedded in what people find visually and emotionally compelling. Now, none of the films we've looked at today are glorifying fascism, but they certainly celebrate a violent aesthetic for resolving conflicts. Sontag argues that if we don't understand what makes fascism attractive, we are vulnerable to it, and I think the same is true of violence. We don't need to feel bad for enjoying these scenes, but we do need to ask why we and others enjoy them. Perhaps repeated exposure to these scenes of cathartic validation through violence teach us that violence is cool sometimes. Maybe it teaches us that our heroes are not above brutishly punching people in the face. Perhaps it encourages arrogance and a lack of humility. Maybe it creates a generation of young men who resonate with characters like Andrew Tate, or accepts the might is right politics of a Donald Trump. Who can say? But I do think a society that struggles to imagine nonviolent heroes may also be struggling to believe that power isn't the only truth.